All right, a happy Saturday out there. Hopefully everyone is doing well. We are going to do a Brooklyn Nets off-season video. The Nets are the first team from the postseason to be eliminated. A 4-0 sweep at the hands of the Philadelphia 76ers. You can read about the Nets on ESPN.com. There are 15 off-season outlooks now up on ESPN.com, all in one article, right? You can find it on the Nets page. It's with Victor Wembanyama as far as his picture on there. When a team gets eliminated, you get added to the off-season outlook. Who will be lucky number 16? Perhaps the Minnesota Timberwolves. So I think it's important we start with Brooklyn here. How I opened it was that they've got roster stability, finally. There's no chaos, right? No Kevin Durant chaos or Kyrie Irving chaos here. But the trade-off, as you've seen it in the second half of the season, in the Philadelphia series, is that the championship window is closed, right? So you've traded off chaos and a chance to win a championship. And I don't even know if we can even say chance to win a championship, considering that the Durant and Irving team last year got swept by the Celtics in the first round. But certainly how this Brooklyn team was playing up until Durant got hurt in that Miami game, you could say that they were a team that could compete for a championship. But that window is now closed, okay? So now how do you I guess we're going to retool this roster here, because let's face it, 13 and 15 since the trade deadline. If this roster as is was fully together for the full season, what are they, a playing team? The 9th seed, the 10th seed? Do they even get in? Does Orlando maybe as that 10th seed here? You enter the offseason with Seth Curry, Cam Johnson, Yuta Watanabe, David Duke, Drew Smith. Those are your free agents. And I think the state of the roster it's basically this Brooklyn team as is like the 2018-19 version before Durant and Irving got there. Blue collar, play their tails off, no finishers on it, or no closers on this team. No, my apologies to Mikal Bridges, who is probably the third best team on a top 4 team. I mean, that's the reality of it. I think, and he had a great year. He's not a number 1. I think he's probably a number 1 on a bad team. He's probably a number 2 on a team that's the 5th seed, the 4th seed. He's not the number 1 if you're trying to win a championship. And nobody asked him to be. He was kind of basically thrust into that position here. But this Brooklyn team right now is the 2018-19 version. The difference is that A, they don't have cap flexibility going into this offseason. B, they don't control all their first round picks. Remember, the Houston Rockets do with the 2024 unprotected, 2026 unprotected, 2025 pick swap, 2027 pick swap, all from that James Harden trade in 2021. Bridges returns. You've got to figure out what to do with Cam Johnson. You've got a team with 8 expiring contracts, including Spencer Dinwiddie and Nick Claxton. And of course, the biggest mystery of this roster is, will we ever see a playable version of Ben Simmons? I mean, let's face it, that's the mystery, and that's going to be the unknown. I don't care what's written about him over the summer, that Ben Simmons is making progress and he's going to be ready for training camp. Show me. Show me in a game that you could become at least a serviceable rotation, because if not, you've got 2 years, $78 million left on his contract for a player who's played 42 games in 2 seasons. That is a big, big number. And I think if you ask Brooklyn right now and you gave them truth serum, what would you have done differently in the Harden-Simmons trade? Would you have asked maybe for Tobias Harris? Maybe you don't do the deal and you just let it play out. But we're not going to play Monday morning quarterback. You've got to figure out the Ben Simmons situation. That's going to be certainly a priority, but a priority as far as trying to get him healthy for a second offseason in a row. The interesting thing is in their finances, given that they've traded Durant and Kyrie, you would think that they're out of the luxury tax. They're not. They're under it by $10 million, but you still have to figure out Cam Johnson, who's a restricted free agent. The good thing is you've got 5 guys earning between $6 to $8 to $20 million. You've got a partially guaranteed contract on Royce O'Neal. That becomes guaranteed on July 10th. So there is some wiggle room as far as to move out salary. If you bring back this same roster and you sign Cam Johnson let's say to a $20 million contract, $18-20 million, restricted free agent, there's a chance that you are going to be a first apron team. You're going to go over that $169.5 million number, which certainly will restrict you as far as how you go about business. As far as trades, you'll still have that, you'll still have the tax mid-level exception here. That goes away for second apron teams. Doesn't impact your draft picks. That's for 2024-25. So your finances are not in order. You've got to figure out, you've got the means to get them in order, but you're still right at that tax threshold, and you've got to figure out what the number is going to be for Cam Johnson. Restricted free agent, you have the right to match on an offer sheet. 5 or 6 teams that have significant cap space. Does a team like Houston come in and give them 4 for $90, which is a big number? They can do that and go out and still have a max slot to go out and get James Harden, for example. You go out and get Cam Johnson, James Harden. That's a nice offseason for the Rockets here. As far as a priority, well, let's go back to the finances too. You have a big trade exception, $18.1 million. You're basically kind of going to use it or lose it. This is the last year to use it. It expires next February, but you use it, you go into the luxury tax. I mean, that's the reality of it. Playable Ben Simmons is certainly your priority. Alexis Johnson, 16.6 per game, a little bit. That's up from 13.9 when he was in Phoenix. Nice wing. Another thing, not your third best player on a good team. Back end starter, 4th or 5th best player here. So you've got to figure out what that number is going to be. Extension candidate to watch is Spencer Dinwiddie. I would not do an extension with Spencer Dinwiddie unless I'm getting him at a $13 to $15 million number here. He's extension eligible for 4 for $128. He's in the starting August 7th. He's in the last year of his contract. I am nice player, 6th man on a good team. Not your go-to point guard. Point guard probably ranked 20th to 25th in the NBA here. Outscored by 21 points in clutch time when Dinwiddie was on the court. Among 100 players that took 103-pointer attempts through from February 9th to the end of the season, he ranked 96 in three-point field goal percentage, 28.9. That's Spencer Dinwiddie. You put him with Luka and you put him with Jalen Brunson, things look a lot differently. When you put him as the feature, not for 4 for $128. So he'll go into the last year of his contract. You could look at a totally different team next year and then in 2024-25. However, you're still going to have that Simmons, basically $40 million number sitting on your books here. So Dinwiddie is extension eligible. Seth Curry is extension eligible through June 30th. 4 for $58. Royce O'Neal, Joe Harris, Ben Simmons. Joe Harris, where have you gone, Joe Harris, from the 2020-20? Ever since that Milwaukee series, it has been downhill. But as I said, you've got $6 million to $20 million in salary of guys, whether it be Joe Harris, Royce O'Neal, Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Thomas, basically missing in action during these playoffs here. So you've got what you have in Brooklyn is you have a lot of pieces that a lot of good playoff teams would like as your 6th man or as your 5th starter. However, there's like 7 of them on this Nets team right now. We talked about the draft assets as far as what they owe Houston. You've got, this year, you've got 21, 22, 52, so you've got some flexibility. Hey, Walker Kessler was drafted in the early 20s. You can find good value players in the first round to either move those 2 first or up, add to your roster just because your means to add outside of making a trade and bringing back Cam Johnson is going to be limited. So you do have those 2. You've got, as I said, a late second, probably a 2-way guy. And then you've got the picks from Phoenix. 25, 27, 29. You have a future first from Philly. Either it's protected top 8 in 2027. You have a 2029 unprotected pick from Dallas. You have the right to swap first with Phoenix or Philly in 28. Now, my big question is going to be what happens when that next disgruntled All-Star becomes available? What happens if, let's say, if Atlanta loses in the playoff and Trae Young becomes available? Are you scorned by the Irving Durant failed experiment to go out and get that superstar that could become available? That's going to be something. Or are you just going to build this organically like you did before you signed those two players in 2019? Under the radar free agents, hitting on draft picks, building around bridges. At the end of the day, though, the upside is probably a 44, 45 win team at best here. So plenty of questions in Brooklyn this offseason. Their season is over. Starts with the draft for them. Then it starts with figuring out with the free agency of Cam Johnson. Have a good Saturday, everyone.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.